Well, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Bob Shear, the Executive Director of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, as well as a former superintendent, assistant superintendent, principal, and classroom teacher. I'm also a parent, so today's Parents as Allies webinar, Transforming Education Systems Through Family School Collaboration, certainly resonates with me both professionally and personally. And we know how valuable your time is, and we hope that you'll find today's session engaging, informative, and collaborative. Amidst all of the changes that we're facing in education right now, strong family and school collaboration is essential to our collective success. I also want everyone to know that today's session is being recorded, just so that we are all aware. So, Lauren, would you mind bringing up slide number 2? All right, so before we begin, let's take a moment and reflect on how we feel 1 month into 2020. Here are 9 squirrels, and in the chat, type in the number of the squirrel that best reflects your feelings thus far on 2022. Oh, a lot of 8s and 5s to begin. So we're tired. I don't know if 8 is we're excited and we're looking up to what could be, or we're just throwing our hands up in the air saying what can possibly come next. Well, that's good. It's always fun to help people level set before you begin an activity. And I think just when we think we're starting to get beyond something, we realize that we're not quite there yet. And so our emotions and our feelings have certainly swung back and forth over these past 2 years. But thank you for taking some time to identify your squirrel. Hopefully you had a chance to laugh and smile from this activity. So now that we know where everyone stands, if we could bring up slide number 3. We do have a number of guests joining us here today, including Rebecca Winthrop and Lauren Ziegler from Brookings, Yuling Chang from Kidsburg, and Tom Ralston from the University of Pittsburgh. I also want to thank Brian Stanford from the AIU for hosting the Zoom room. We do have 3 objectives today. Number 1, we want to explore the Parents as Allies project and the Brookings Family Engagement Playbook. We want to learn a little bit more about parent and teacher beliefs in southwestern Pennsylvania through some of the work that's been done. And third, discuss tools for enhancing family engagement. And so at this time, I would like to introduce Yuling Chang. Yuling is the marketing director for Kidsburg. She loves exploring Pittsburgh with her 2 daughters and trying new things during Remake Learning Days across America Festival. And that's a shameless plug, but we all love that. So we're gonna make sure we get that in there. And she leads much of the Parents as Allies work. So at this time, Yuling, thank you very much for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bob. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. As Bob shared, I'm with Kidsburg, and what we do is we write about all the fantastic things happening in this region for families. It could be about learning, it could be about upcoming events, it could be about Kidsburg heroes, kids doing amazing kind acts. So I hope you'll check us out. But what brings me here today is the Parents as Allies project. So Lauren, next slide. And with this project, Kidsburg has been a convener in bringing together these groups of people, Brookings, IDEO, and 100. And what brought us together was one central question. And this question is, what if all of us, whether you're a community member, a parent, a caregiver, a teacher, if we all saw ourselves as children's learning allies, if we all worked together? And we know that the last 18 months have been difficult, but in some ways it has also brought us all closer together. And so using the research of Brookings, which we'll hear more about in a moment, as our foundation for this project, we then engaged IDEO to take 11 school teams here in southwestern PA through a human-centered design process. And then we also scoured the world through 100 for innovative ideas happening in other parts of the world on family engagement. At this time, I'd also like to just say thank you to the Grable Foundation for supporting this work. So with that, I'm going to share more about what the school districts locally have been doing at the end of today's session, but I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Winthrop, the co-director of the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution.
Thanks, Yuling. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Bob, and all the others for hosting. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the center in case you've never heard of us. Here's a few slides with some bullets, but largely what I want to emphasize is we are a research institution that focuses on research that's useful for practitioners and policymakers, and we are nonpartisan, and we are basically focused on how can we make sure every kid in every community around the world, including in southwestern PA, can get a high quality 21st century education. And we've become increasingly interested. We started 3 years ago on the role of family school collaboration in that objective. And I'll tell you a little bit about our project and what we've done. You can go to the next slide, Lauren. So we with our partners, many of whom are on this call, formed a family engagement and education network. And this was a pivot for us. We were going to go in person and do research on the ground. COVID happened in the middle of our project. And in some ways it was a real blessing because we got to have so many more partners join. We have about 50 project collaborators. A bunch of them are government jurisdiction leaders and their teams, and then there's civil society organizations along with some private school networks. And just a huge shout out, Bob, to you for hosting. You've been part of the network. Huge shout out to Amy Birch, to Tom Ralston, to Yu Ling, who's part of the network, and a big thanks to Greg Baer, who was our very first call for Pennsylvania, saying, "Hey, Greg, do you think you might want to work with us?" And he put us in contact with lots of folks. So this is the group of people who we have collectively developed this body of research and this guidance together with. And I can give you quickly, I'm going to go through and give you some of the key highlight framing messages from the playbook, and then we'll pause and have some questions on that part. So the main message really that we found after this 3 years of research, half before COVID, half after, is that there is an opportunity to really shift how we approach family school collaboration in the long term. And that there's a big appetite to do that. You can go to the next slide, Lauren. We found that parents are expecting, this is something you all probably are aware of, are expecting to engage differently because of COVID moving forward. I know in some communities, it's political polarization has not helped. And we can talk about that if that's something you're experiencing. But we also found, and this is data from your region, from Southwest PA, but we found similar data across the world, across all our project collaborators, that teachers are really eager to engage differently, moving forward, more deeply, more frequently, with more numbers of families. So our recommendation is to really lean into this, as complicated as it may be. And the reason we say that is not only because there's big demand and expectations from both parents and teachers, but because if you do it well, it can have really good outcomes. And in fact, we found 4 main goals that the high quality family school collaboration can lead to. The first 2 in yellow and orange are around improving attendance and completion and improving learning and development, especially for kids who are not being well served by the school system right now, or not performing well. Family school collaboration can really help maximize that. We also found that it can really help shift the purpose of either what you want schools to, students to learn and be able to do, sort of the purpose of education for students, and shift the purpose of education for communities. This came out quite strongly. This is the dark blue box, really around sort of schools being a hub of not only learning and development for children, but really being a resource for families. It came out quite strongly, I think probably because of COVID, and really shifting the lens to schools as this really important community actor. We argue in the playbook that this is an important thing to lean into. These 4 goals are important, especially because of the data. You can talk about why family engagement is important for the next slide, Lauren, because there is lots of research showing that if you do it well, family school collaboration is 10 times more likely. Schools with strong family school collaboration are 10 times more likely to improve learning outcomes, particularly for the kids most farthest behind. We've also found that it's highly cost effective, and that it actually is really important. If you're trying to do a reform, if you're trying to shift, sort of do any type of transformative work or education reform, if you don't have an alignment or between schools, teachers, school leaders, families, teachers, school leaders are really around what a good quality education looks like for the kids in that community, that can be a huge barrier we found in reforms being successful. So for that very reason, this is particularly important for the blue boxes, the blue goals. That type of dialogue between families and schools is really crucial and can be highly effective to support change and help navigate change. If we did address in the playbook sort of the reasons, you can go to the next slide, Lauren, if family school collaboration is so great, why isn't it happening more, or why is it so difficult, and the barriers. And there's lots of barriers. I'm sure you guys can think of many in your daily practice and work. You probably have many more to add to this list, but we put things in 3 big buckets. One is that it has for a long time not been given, in our opinion, especially related to the importance and the impact it can have, been given sufficient attention in pre-service, in-service, continuing professional development for all education personnel. It's often an afterthought. It's not a requirement for many certification programs for teachers, school leaders, et cetera, superintendents. But it is a skill set, and it's kind of unfair to expect teachers, school leaders, superintendents to automatically know how to do it, because there is a whole body of research and evidence and skills and tools that are needed to do it well. So that's a big gap. Legacy of structural oppression is a big gap. Oftentimes marginalized families or students or parents from marginalized communities do not feel welcome or safe going into schools or open to express or share information. So that's an ongoing gap that really it behooves schools to work on. And then generally there's just a lack of attention and focus. So those are sort of the really big picture barriers that we found in Southwest PA, but around the world, really. These are big high level barriers. And so the other piece that we talk about in the playbook is, well, what is the evolving good practice around family school engagement? And there's 2 things that I think are really important to stick in your minds. One is that there's been a move over time from involvement to engagement. And I want you to just take a moment and read the slide. If it's tiny, you can enlarge it. I'm going to talk through the blue box. So for a long time, schools have really relied, I think, on family involvement. And actually, a lot of the expertise 20, 30 years ago was around family involvement in terms of guidance, and which is really schools, quote unquote, leading with their mouth. They're communicating, they're telling parents, they're giving updates to families. They're telling parents how they can contribute. Here, parents plug in these 3 or 4 ways. And they're really looking at serving clients. This is not bad, but it does not lead to the type of transformative good impact that we talked about before. What you need to do is do more family engagement, which is schools leading with its ears, really listening to parents on a whole host of concerns, and then really getting from parents how they want to be engaged, where they can contribute, and then having a negotiation and a discussion. It's not just parents saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z and the school's rolling over. No, but really trying to work with parents as partners. And the reason that this having a good balance between involvement and engagement is important is, you can go to the next slide, Lauren, is because we found that at the core of every single effective family school engagement collaboration and program is strong, trusting relationships. And if you don't have strong, trusting relationships, sometimes we found that involvement strategies, which are sharing bits of information, doing good communications one way, sometimes they can backfire. And I'm certainly happy to talk more about that. But the core is strong, trusting relationships. And we also found in our research, which I'll pause after this next slide, but we'll talk more about our research later on after that, is that parents and teachers who had stronger trusting relationships also had stronger shared beliefs about what makes for a good quality education. So when teachers are more receptive to parents' inputs, et cetera, or when parents perceive they're more receptive, which is actually the same thing for parents, and feel a stronger sense of trust, Parents are much more likely to say they share the same beliefs with their schools teachers and school leaders about what makes for a good quality education. This trust and alignment on vision really go hand in glove in every single community we studied. So I thought I would just pause for a moment there before we dive in. Bob, I can't totally see if there's any chat or people can come off mute. Just any, you can put any questions or reactions in the chat or come off mute. I can't see that. Yeah, if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, we don't have any questions in the chat right now.
Okay. I'll leave it for a minute if anybody. Okay. Sounds good. So let's move on. What I want to dig in now is share with you about this idea of alignment, trust and alignment going together. And when we talk about aligning beliefs, it really is our families and communities and teachers and schools on the same page about what does a good quality education look like? Or do they have a different set of ideas about that? And the reason this is really important, you can go to the next slide, Lauren, is that we know that this type of alignment, cohering of vision is an important way to establish trust and to sort of get on the same page. And an important way, when you have that trust, it's much easier to navigate change. It's much easier to have successful reforms or just change in general. And I know there's been a lot of change in the world and in education. So one of the things we did in this research with our partners was to say, well, let's go find out. I don't know, are parents and families on the same page with teachers and schools? Let's go see. And we did, we surveyed 25,000 parents across 10 countries and 6,000 teachers and did focus groups and interviewed lots of people and did lots of things. And I'm going to report back to you what we found. We're going to go over three things. Briefly what our methodology was, and we're going to talk through our findings on two of the many things we found, purpose and indicators of quality. So for methodology, these were the questions. I'll give you a couple seconds to read. We were looking at the relationship you see in the orange box between how old the parent's kid is or the teacher's student, parents and teachers' level of education themselves. For teachers, it was more their experience level of teaching, level of trust between parents and teachers, level of alignment. Again, that's that vision. Vis-a-vis what they think is the most important purpose of school in the blue box, pedagogical preferences, beliefs about what makes a good quality education, which we talk about, indicators of quality, and sources of information that influence that. How are parents' beliefs developed? We're going to talk about two of those pieces. And in particular, if you go to the next slide, we're going to highlight for you what we found in Southwest PA and share a little bit from other places too. You'll see we surveyed over 1,600 respondents and over 300 parents and over 300 teachers. And please note the timing, because this was during COVID, closures on and off. And so I don't know if it would be different at a different moment in time. So let's go through purpose first. We'll turn to that next. So I do have a question for you guys. Get ready to type something in the chat box. Could you say in one word or one short phrase what you think, we're going to take about 1 minute here, 60 seconds, is the most important purpose of school? You personally, you yourself personally. And Sumya, there was no Arabic country engaged, not because we didn't want to, but because we got full. We got full of our partners. We couldn't take any more on to do that research, but we're engaging with Lebanon at the moment. So we got social emotional learning, growth, education, building lifelong learners, preparation for life, developing a well-rounded individual, quite a bit of holistic vision here, assisting students to find their passion and purpose, developing confidence and curiosity, preparing for the future. Purpose of school is education, true. Lifelong learners, preparing for a changing world. You guys have a lot of similar answers and themes. So we asked for post-secondary opportunities. Okay, that's the first time I see that one. That was one of our options that we asked. Social skills, yep, that was another option that we asked. Lauren, why don't you go to the next slide? So we we took basically literature saying, you know, what are some of the main things that schools do? And we had 4 things that we forced parents to choose, the most important, as well as teachers. And we didn't use these words, but it's basically social emotional, are basically helping students gain self-knowledge and find a personal sense of passion, etc. It's preparation for post-secondary, which is academic. It's preparation for work, which is the economic purpose of school, and preparing to be good citizens, which is the civic purpose of school. Schools do all of these things. But we wanted to see where people's hearts were at. And Lauren, I wondered if you could walk through how we visualize this information.
Sure. So I'm going to walk you through the results from one of the jurisdictions in the study, which was Columbia. We did a nationally representative survey there. And when we asked parents this question, you can see on the left-hand side their responses in the pie chart, which is what you're probably familiar with seeing, right? So we can see that 31% of parents prioritize the socio-emotional purpose. You can see that the academic and civic purposes were more or less tied. And then 18% of parents said they preferred the economic purpose. So you could look at this in a pie chart as you see here, you could put it in a bar graph, but we were really interested in displaying it in a belief map, which is what you see on the right-hand side of your screen. And this is a radar chart. So some of you may be familiar with this type of graph. If you're not, we're going to walk you through quickly how you make it, and then we're going to do 2 together. So you can see here in our radar chart, we have our 2 axes. And then you can see here that this point in the middle, that represents 0%. Our scale goes to 50% on each of these lines. And then the important thing is there are no negative numbers in a radar chart. So this line here is the percent of parents who responded to the economic purpose. So you can see we have a point here marking 18%. Over here, we have a point here that represents the 25% of parents who said civics, and so on. And then the cool thing is when you connect the data points, you get a distinct shape. So we can see that the belief map shape for Columbia, it's oriented towards the socio-emotional purpose. And then what's really fun when we compare different jurisdictions to see how the shapes differ. So we're going to do this together. I'm just going to switch here and pull up our Jamboard. And what I would love is if you could just shout out or put in the chat what you think for your jurisdiction. If you were to survey, say, 100 parents in your jurisdiction, how many of those 100 would prioritize the socio-emotional purpose? Just kind of your best guess. What do you think? Either shout it out or put it in the chat. How many parents out of 100 would prioritize socio-emotional? In Columbia, it was 31. Do you think it's more? I see 40, 25, 50, less than half. All right, great, 50, 60. So I'm gonna just sort of take an average of kind of what I see. We're gonna make a hybrid belief map. So I'm gonna make my point here. I'm gonna say our scale is 50 as well. So this would be 25. And I'm gonna put it at the top. I'm seeing about, I'll say about 45%. That's kind of what we'll say. So what about academics? How many parents out of 100 do you think would prioritize academics? If we're saying 45 prioritize socio-emotional. Okay, so somebody's saying more academics, 65. What else? I see 35, 30, 80. Okay, so we could have a couple of different belief maps. If it was 80, it would be all the way over here. So you're saying higher, 100. You only had to pick one though. But it looks like academics is going to be way over here. So then if we were to make the rest of a belief map, that would mean if everything had to add up to 100, that economics and civics would probably be pretty low. And then we connect these and our belief map would look something like that. So you get the idea. We could do the same for teachers as well. But what I'm gonna have us do is give the floor back to Rebecca, and she can show us what the data actually said for Southwestern PA, as well as a couple of other jurisdictions. So let me pull this back up and over to you.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. So you can see that Southwestern PA is right there, smack dab in the middle box. About a third said social emotional purpose, a third, a little less, said academic, 22% said economic, and very few, 6% said civic. And I just want to, we put in other places around the world. You see Maharashtra, India on the left, which is like all about civic purpose, and the Buenos Aires, Argentina, which was really all about the social emotional purpose. Just to tell you that we did not find a single belief map that looked exactly the same anywhere we went. It is really, really different. And when you overlay, if you can go to the next slide, teachers versus parents, you can see here, if you can zoom in, if it's tiny, the orange is parents. So it's that sort of more, equal, a little more social emotional, but pretty heavy on academic and social emotional. Teachers were much more focused in southwestern PA on social emotional purpose, and a bit, not a ton more, but a tiny bit more on civic. So less focused really on the academic purpose. And why that's important is there is sort of a gap in sort of the belief maps of both parents and teachers, but there's also a perception gap. If you can go to the next slide, Lauren. We asked parents and teachers. So the one on the left is what you just saw, shaded in blue. But then we asked parents, hey, if you had to draw a teacher's belief map, what would it look like? And they really thought that teachers were completely focused on academics. So they thought everybody was going that way versus teachers going up. So parents really have this perception about teachers in southwestern PA that they're heavily focused on academics. And teachers really thought that the parents were heavily focused on economic purpose of school, neither of which was true. This is sort of this idea of a perception gap. And our big takeaway for that is really that, there's lots of gaps, and it behooves people to talk to each other about this, and to take a step back and have some conversations about it. One more thing that I want to talk through is this idea of indicators of quality. I'm going to talk through this, and then we'll take a little breakout group and hear if you're surprised or what your thoughts are on this. We asked parents, hey, what do you think is a good quality education? What are the indicators you're looking at? We did not use those words, but anytime a parent says, that's a good school, what are they thinking? Like, not what are they thinking, but what literally are they judging it by? Or that's a bad school, what are they judging it by? And vice versa. And then we grouped everybody's responses, and we sort of grouped parents into a couple categories, and teachers. Are they more sort of well-being parents? They're really focused on their their children developing friendships and social skills and pursuing a sense of personal passion with an extracurricular and enjoying school? Or are they more academic parents, that they're really most satisfied and focused on test scores and grade level achievement prep for post-secondary? And what we found, and you can go to the next slide, is in Southwest PA, teachers and parents are kind of have a similar breakdown. It's kind of half-half. Half the parents are kind of well-being, half the teachers are, and half the parents are academic-y focused, and same with teachers. Except what is interesting is, again, when you ask parents to say what percentage they think teachers, what are teachers most focused on? Are they more well-being-y focused or academic-y focused? And vice versa, when you ask teachers what they think of parents, teachers, this is a little bit complicated. The top line, the top bars at the top, basically it shows that teachers, which is on the right-hand side, accurately predict what more or less accurately predict what parents think prioritize, about half-half. Except at the bottom, even though teachers prioritize half-half, parents are way off on what they think of teachers. Only 46% of teachers said they're really more focused on sort of academic indicators, and parents thought that it was close to 80%. So a much bigger number. Again, their perceptions of parents are that their parents' perceptions of teachers is they're heavily focused on academics, even though teachers are not reporting as such. So again, our takeaway there is really around feedback loops, and thinking a bit about, we don't have total insight. The survey didn't tell us why parents are having this misperception about teachers. We'd love you guys to discuss it and talk about it, but certainly would have to do with feedback loops, the type of information parents are getting, et cetera, back from school. So next, we're just curious to get to hear your thoughts and reactions. We're going to break you into groups. Are you surprised by this data is one question to talk about, and why do you think parents and teachers answered the way they did? So we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Thanks, everybody. We had a really great discussion in our room talking about sort of the role of the pandemic. The last thing Melanie said was the role of the pandemic really has brought sort of the social emotional purpose of school, civic purpose of school, this other sort of non-academic roles to the forefront. And she had a great quote saying, I think schools can only go up from here because that's really important for children's learning and development. So I hope you had fruitful discussions. And Lauren, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Great, that's a great segue. Can only go up from here. So we're going to spend the next 15 or so minutes talking about solutions to close us out. So we have a couple that we will take you through. The first that I want to talk about is the conversation starter tool. So a couple of you asked, oh, you know, these are really interesting belief maps, but how do I know like what my own community might be really different from Southwestern PA as a whole? How do I know what my own community is saying? Well, if you're curious, you can use these conversation starter tools to find out. And these are tools that help you survey your community to get that data, but really the purpose is to begin an intentional conversation where community members can really come together and talk about these things. You know, what is the purpose of school? What does a quality education look like? And that this can be a way to really build that trust and alignment that we know is so essential towards transforming systems. So if you're interested in this, at the end of the presentation, we do have a sign up link that we'll share with you. But what the tools do is they give you a condensed version of the surveys that we asked previously, and then it takes you through an analysis and a discussion guide so you can actually begin and have that conversation. So you'll hear more about that at the end. And then we're going to spend more of our time now talking about the strategy landscape. So this is another tool that is in our playbook. And what we did was we put it together looking at over 500 family engagement strategies from 64 countries around the world. So we really have a good picture of what family school engagement can look like. What are the range of possibilities of different approaches? And how you use this strategy landscape is by looking at the goals in the center. So these go back to the goals that Rebecca mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. You have goals 1 and 2, which are around improving the existing system, and goals 3 and 4, which are around transforming the system. So any family school engagement strategy is going to hit at 1 or more goals. There's also going to be a place where the strategy is taking place, from the home to the community. And then in blue, we have these levers for change. So these are fairly self-explanatory, but the one thing to note here is that they can be two-way. So for example, providing information, you could have a family school engagement strategy where a school is providing information to families, but you could equally have a strategy where the families are providing information to schools. And then in pink, we have family roles. So these are all the different ways for families to get involved. The difference between supporting and creating is supporting is often maybe directed by the school, where the school kind of lets families say where they can be involved. And creating, we like to think about where families really have agency to contribute. So to help bring this to light, I'm going to actually ask Bob if he can take us through the Allegheny family centers and how this shows up on the strategy landscape. So over to you, Bob.
Sure. Thank you, Lauren. And so a little bit of background as well. When we look at these family engagement strategies across the world, some of them are directly driven by the schools and the school districts, whereas others are after-school programs or community providers. And so it does sort of allow you to weave a web together of the different supports that students need. And so if you want to just sort of maybe click through the next, I think the slide builds as we move on. And so we'll start with the family support centers that we have here at the AIU. And in special shout out, we have some of our family center staff members here on the call today. It's because some of them may not realize that they're in the playbook. And so this was work that was collected this past summer when the playbook was being developed. And so when you first of all look at the goal in this is improving learning and development. And then if you go to the next piece, when you look at the place, the family centers in the community. And so a little bit of background, there are 10 family support centers that we at the Allegheny Intermediate run in our 10 most underserved communities in Allegheny County. And so the idea of them being in the community is incredibly important, because then we want them to become a hub where folks can utilize those, often within walking distance for many of them, but then they become a resource for the things that they need while they're in the community. And now when you take a look at the lever, you see the lever pieces here, and they're pretty impressive in terms of what they offer. So they do provide information to the families that they work directly with. And some of that information is just navigating maybe their child's early development stages, or navigating how to utilize resources within the community, or even how to, navigate signing a student up for school. But then building those relationships, making sure, we talked about trust being incredibly important, make sure there's a trusting relationship so that these families see that the folks that are in the support center are there to build those relationships with them, to really identify what it is that they need and when they need it. It's building their skills. For some, it might be upskilling so that they can take a look at other job opportunities. And so that might be something that's provided through the Family Center. But then those resources are incredibly important because, again, you can't be all things to everyone, but how can you help sort of connect folks to those resources that they need to be successful, and then designing, really kind of working with them to figure out these plans that our families need to continue to find success as a family, but also, of course, to support the young people that are in the home. And then we look at the family role, we're sort of in both the supporting and the creating. And so it's figuring out, again, what do folks need, but also allowing them to sort of create where they go from here. We have a very, very much a strengths-based approach. Let's not look at the things that folks don't have, but what do they have and how can we fill in the gaps and continue to move them forward. And so pages 170 through 176 in the playbook, if you have an opportunity to take a look at it, highlight this a little bit more, give you some more details, but a very high level. This is an example of one sort of parent engagement resource and then how it finds itself in the playbook. So thank you, Lauren.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, it was great to be able to feature the family support centers in the playbook. And it's nice to see, how you could use the strategy landscape to really sort of look at the work that you all are doing. So if you have time, go back, use the landscape and sort of, take a look at your family engagement strategies and see, or get inspiration from others. We're going to put the link in the chat in just a moment so you can see where to access that. And then the last piece I want to take you through is the strategy finder. So from those 500 strategies I mentioned that we used to make the landscape, we highlighted 62 of those, including the family centers, and we put them online. And so this is just an interactive way where you can filter through and look for these strategies. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ling, who's going to take us through the design sprints.
So I mentioned at the beginning that in the southwestern PEA region that Kidsburg convened 11 school districts. And what we did is we put together 11 teams comprised of parents and an administrator, but mostly parents, and the parents led the team. And they did a human-centered design process with IDEO. And so if you can move to the next slide, you can see the different school districts that participated in the bottom left corner. And some of the things that came out of this process was more empathy for each other, as well as better ideas as they started to try to solve some of the problems that they were looking at together. What was also interesting is, in addition to the design teams, Kidsburg hosted 11 school district conversations with the community and to get feedback. And we talked about, what is the purpose of school? What kind of ideas do you have? What do you think of these ideas? So what I want to do is just share one example of what a school went through in this design sprint process. And so on the next slide, you can see the different areas of innovations. So each team looked at these. They looked at the purpose. They looked at innovative pedagogy, at agency. How do we build parents' confidence to engage with teachers and administrators? How do we build that trust? And what is the willingness, right, to pursue this work? So each team picked one of these areas to focus on. And so for today, I'm actually going to highlight Avonworth School District and what they went through. So the next slide. So through the end of the process, you can see there, this was the team members on the right side, and their team superpowers were laughter, ideas, and cultural diversity. Their aspiration was to have parents demand for an education that develops the whole student. I know in my breakout group, we spoke a lot about social emotional and balancing that with academics. This team went out and called other people in the community for their empathy insights. What is it that could be better at school? What is it that you like? What do you think is the purpose of education? And so they started to get an idea of what their community is thinking. And then they put together what they called hacks. These are ideas that they just wanted to try to leverage school family engagement. So one of their hacks was to map out the community based on the languages spoke spoken at home. They have an initiative called Be the Kind Kid. And so they're putting up a poster in their elementary school, in their primary center, of all the different languages spoken at home that translate Be the Kind Kid. But then they also wanted families to learn about each other. And so then that led to a new event called the Hi Neighbor series. And if you can go to the next slide, what they did is they looked at the different cultures celebrated at home, and they put together an event called Hi Neighbor. And at this first event, they celebrated Ramadan, Day of the Dead, and Lunar New Year. And they engaged the families who celebrated these cultures at home and how to produce this event. There was a reading activity, a hands-on activity. They opened up the spots for 75 families, and it quote unquote sold out. And families were engaged. They were like, I want to share my celebration as well. And so now this is developing into a whole new series of events for that school district. The next slide, in the design process, these school teams actually generated 200 hacks. And this slide is a summary of some of those hacks. So it doesn't represent every hack that I heard about, but a lot of these were represented across different school districts. So I'll kind of highlight a few of them. For communications, a lot of school districts talked about streamlining communications. In fact, I remember going to Brentwood Borough, and they had sticky notes in all different colors of what parents received as communications from elementary all the way through high school. And that was an aha moment for both the parents and administrators as to what they could do better as far as streamlining communications. I'm going to jump down to new school events in New Brighton Area School District. They had a team of dads who talked about their superpowers, that what they bring to the table is that they're the father in the relationship. They want to be engaged. Let's do this in a way that's comfortable for everyone. So they put together a cornhole tournament, and they're going to have these sports related activities where they can bring their kids, and then they can learn from experts and educators as to how they can better support their kids at home. So these are some of the hacks. I'll post some links in the chat box so that you can read more about some of these ideas generated by different school districts.
Great, thanks so much, Elaine. All right, so we would love to spend more time there, obviously, but we do want to make sure we get you out at the top of the hour. So we're going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes. The first thing that we would ask, I'm going to put this in the chat right now, is if you could please let us know how you found today's session. So you could click on the link. We probably won't have time to pause and let you take the whole survey, but if everybody could just click on that link now so it's open on your browser, and then when the meeting ends, you'll have time. It should take maybe only 5 minutes. We really appreciate your feedback. So that's there. And then I'm going to ask Elaine to take us through the next couple slides.
So we're excited to share that we're continuing this work in Southwestern PA for 2 more years, thanks to support from the Grable Foundation. So we're going to expand our cohort of schools that we're working with from 11 to 25 school districts. It'll be a 2-year journey. We'll go through a design sprint process again with parent-led teams, probably co-led actually with teachers. There will be more research and information sharing from partners like Brookings. And that will provide some mini grant funding to school districts so they can test ideas and they can reiterate on them and refine them. And throughout all of this, we will engage with the community as well as capture these stories on Kidsburgh's website. And I'll post a link where you can read the stories we've produced so far. So if you have any interest in joining us, you're always welcome to email us at Kidsburgh, and I'll also put that email address in the chat box. And tomorrow night, we also have another webinar. This one was designed for parents and caregivers in mind. It's from 7 to 7:45, and Christine Sorensen from KDKA TV will be moderating the discussion. We'll share some of the information that was shared today. We'll go a little bit more in depth about the design sprint process and engage with families and parents in a more informal setting. So if you'd like to join us, please do. You can still register all the way up until 6:45 p.m. tomorrow night.
Great, thanks, Elaine. And then I'm going to give you all a few more links just in case you wanted a few more things or ways to get involved. I mentioned those conversation starter tools. If you're interested in piloting them, we have a link where you could sign up. We also have something that's called a guided workshop, which is basically like similar to this presentation that we just gave, that you could give, to others at your school. So if you're interested in sort of, taking this information and sharing it with others in your school or community, let us know. We're happy to share those materials. And then you can contact Brookings at leapfrogging@brookings.edu. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Tom Ralston to ask if he could share some closing remarks.
Thanks, Lauren. And I really appreciate everyone joining the call today. I participated in this research study, and when I did, I was actually a school leader working in the Avamore School District, and now I've transitioned over to working in the university. But I just think about this project and how important it is right now, the time we are in. It's always been important, obviously, to engage families. But when I participated in the study, I immediately went to some of the shortcomings I think maybe I had as a school leader, not thinking deeply enough about how we engage parents and being traditional in my thoughts about, the traditional ways that we engage or we involve parents and not engage them. So I really think that it's the perfect time for us to do this as we start to build and more importantly, rebuild trusting relationships in our communities between our families and our schools. This provides a great roadmap. The playbook provides lots of great strategies and tools for school leaders and teachers and parents to use to think about how they can really build these rich relationships that are ultimately going to benefit students. When I look at this study and I think about it, I think about my educational psychology class back in undergrad, where we looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And if we don't take care of those basic foundational pieces for students where they feel safe, where they feel a warm relationship with an adult. And that's true for parents too. If we don't do those things, we're not going to get to the top of the pyramid and where students are really actualized to make sure that they reach their full potential. So I think this has been a great opportunity. I know I'm so fortunate to have had the opportunity to participate in the study. And the great thing about it is it's not over, right? Through the work of Kidsburg, we continue this work, but in a unique way in each and every school district out there. So I encourage you to get involved, and thank you for Brookings Institute, for Kidsburg, for supporting work, and the Grable Foundation for involving all of us. Thank you.